Okay, class, in this lesson, you are going to learn to compute the monthly cost of paying for a house and explain the research that is necessary before you purchase a home. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here are some things you need to know about mortgages, right? So first thing is, I think it's pretty obvious, but just to make sure that it's clear, a loan for purchasing a home is called a mortgage, and the market value is the amount for which a house could be sold. Now, homeowners also pay property tax, also known as real estate taxes, and those taxes are collected, which help pay for government services such as schools, libraries, police, and other things that a city may need. Now, the assessed value of a home is an amount used to determine the property tax, but it's not necessarily the same as the market value. And we're going to go through an example of how assessed value can be calculated. Now, after making a down payment on a house, most people take out a mortgage to pay the balance. And when you take out a mortgage, there are essentially two major types of mortgages. One is called a fixed rate mortgage, and the other one is called the adjustable rate mortgage. With a fixed rate mortgage, this is a loan where the monthly payment and the APR are exactly the same throughout the entire period of the loan. On the other hand, with an adjustable rate mortgage, this is a type of loan in which the monthly payment and the APR may change per the signed agreement. So, for example, you could have a 5-year ARM where an ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage. It is a loan that stays fixed for 5 years, and then it could fluctuate after that period. Or you could have a 3-year ARM where a mortgage can fluctuate during that period, and after that, it stays fixed for the rest of the loan. So when you go into an adjustable rate mortgage, you need to be very careful about what you're signing up for, because the rate can change fairly significantly and affect your ability to afford the home. Okay, now with a foreclosure, this is when the homeowner does not pay the mortgage as agreed upon in writing, and the bank has the right to foreclose or take possession of the home and sell it. And so you definitely do not want to get into a situation where you are behind on payments for too long, because then you are at risk of foreclosure. And now the other term that you may run into is called private mortgage insurance. And this is a required insurance in the event that you are not able to put significant down payment, and this insurance covers the mortgage provider in the event that you are not able to repay the loan. So typically, when you don't put 20% or more as down payment for a home, you will be required to pay for private mortgage insurance. And then lastly, homeowners insurance. This is insurance that will cover you in case of damage due to fire or other natural disasters. And it will also cover the contents of the home in case of theft or vandalism. Okay, so hopefully that kind of gives you a brief overview of some of the terms that you will run into when you are ready to purchase a home. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at example number 1. Here we have Heather, who is planning to buy a home. She has some money for a down payment already, and she sees a home that she would like and calculates that she would need to borrow $190,000 from a bank over a 30-year period. So this is a 30-year loan, which is very traditional. Most people will get a loan that will take 30 years to repay. In this loan, the APR is 6.4%, and the question is, what will be her total interest for the 30 years? Okay, so in addition to the $190,000 that she's going to need to pay back, the bank is going to be charging her 6.4% interest, and we want to know what that dollar value ends up being at the end of 30 years. Okay, so if you recall from our previous lesson, we were calculating monthly payment. You'll see that the equation to determine monthly payment is defined as the principal. Okay, so in this case, that would be 190,000 times the rate. Okay, and remember the interest rate has to be in decimal form. So in this problem, we have an APR 6.4%, which means the rate, or the R here, would be 0.064. That's going to be divided by 12 and then times the quantity 1 plus the rate divided by 12 to the 12t power, where t is the number of years. In this case, this is a 30-year loan, so it's going to be 12 times 30. And that's going to be divided by that same quantity again, 1 plus r over 12, raised to the 12 times 30 power minus 1, okay? So if we were to go ahead and plug in all of those value, then our monthly payment would be 190,000 times 0.064 divided by 12 times 1 plus 0.064 divided by 12 raised to the 12 times 30 power, and that's all divided by 1 plus 0.064 divided by 12 raised to the 12 times 30 power minus 1. Okay, now as you all probably know, I like to use a spreadsheet to calculate this rather than punch all of these numbers in. So let's go to Google Sheets and let's go ahead and put in that function to calculate monthly payment, which is PMT, and we're going to take the rate of 6.4%, and that's going to be monthly, so we divide that by 12, and that's over the course of 30 months, but 30 years, so we have to convert that to months, so that's going to be 360 months, and that's on a loan, that's 190,000, so we're going to make that 190,000, and that payment comes out to $1,188.46. $1,188.46. Okay, so we figured out the monthly payment, but we need to multiply this by 360 months. And when we do, we get $427,845.60. Okay, so this is how much Heather will pay over the course of 30 years. Now we want to know how much interest she's paying, so we're going to have to subtract out the 190,000, which is the amount that she borrowed. And when we do, we get a total of $237,845.60. So this is the total interest that Heather would be paying on this loan. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to example 2. Okay, here we have Elizabeth and Joseph looking at a house, and they contacted the tax assessor to find out what property taxes would be. In their city, the tax is based on the square footage and other features of the house. Okay, so I had mentioned earlier on that the assessed value of a home is not necessarily the market value. And so in this particular city, we are told that the assessment is based on square footage and features of the home. Okay. Below this example, this ad describes their house, and the question is, what is the annual property tax given all of this information, and if the city has a tax rate of 89%. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is determine the assessed value, and first item that we would look for is the first floor square footage. Okay, so we see that the square footage of the first floor is 600. So let's go ahead and notate that. So first floor, that's 600 square feet. We're going to multiply that by this square footage information. This is the first floor over the basement, and that's $3 a square foot. So we would multiply that by $3. Okay, and so that total works out to $1,800. Okay, so then the next piece is the second floor. Okay, and we're told that the square footage of the second floor is 1,500. Okay, so we are looking at the second floor, and that's 1,500. And if you take a look at this chart here, the second floor is 2.25. Okay, $2.25. So we're going to multiply that by $2.25, and that works out to $3,375. Okay, now going back to the first floor, I just wanted to make it clear because I didn't specify this. There are two first floor square footage rate, and I didn't just choose this. The reason that we selected this is because we're told that this house is a full basement, so the first floor would be over a basement. If it did not have a full basement, then it would be first floor over slab. Okay, so the next item is the dormer. And if you take a look, the dormer is 20 by 20 feet. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that down. Dormer, 20 by 20 feet. And we're going to multiply that by the rate for dormer, which is $1. And that's going to work out to $400. Okay. And then after the dormer, we have the garage, and the garage is 12 by 21. So let's go ahead and notate that. The garage is 12 by 21, and the rate for that is also $1. And that's going to work out to $252. Okay. All right, so moving on to the next item. After the garage, we have the 16 by 32 foot vinyl pool. So let's go ahead and notate that. The pool, which is 16 by 32. And the rate for the pool is 75 cents. So that's going to be multiplied by 75 cents. And that's going to work out to $384. The other item that I missed earlier on was the deck. This is a 30 by 30 foot deck. Let's go ahead and capture that. This is 30 by 30. And the rate for the deck is 50 cents. So we're going to multiply that by 50 cents. And that's going to work out to $450. All right. So I think that completes this side of the information that we're going to need. So we're going to move this side. So here we're going to look at the land, and we're told that the land is going to be 3/4 of an acre. So 0.75 acres times $1,000. That's going to work out to $750. All right. You'll notice that the first bathroom there's no charge for the assessment. However, any extra full baths is going to be at $100. We're told that this house has 2.5 baths. So we're going to need to take in the extra bathroom, which is going to be 1.5 because the first is not charged. And we're going to multiply that by $100. And that's going to work out to $150. All right, a few more things. The next one is the fireplace. Okay, you'll see that this has a fireplace, FRPL. Okay, and the fireplace is a flat $125. So that's going to be $125. There's also central AC. Okay, and that's what the CAC stands for, central air conditioning. And that's a flat $200. And then the last item is called gas heating. And gas heating is a flat $700. And notice that in the description here, it says gas heat. So we want to capture that as well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put in $700. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and add all of this up. And the total works out to $8,586. Okay, that's the total, but that's not the assessed value. Because remember, in the description here, the city has a tax rate of 89%. So we're going to take 89% of that. So it's going to be multiplied by 0.89. And that's going to work out to $7,641.54. Okay, so this is how much the homeowners, Lisbeth and Jose, will pay every year based on the assessed value of the property. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to example 3. Raymond and Sophia have a mortgage with Wells Fargo. The bank requires them to pay their homeowner's insurance, property tax, and mortgage in one monthly payment to the bank. Now, this is not unusual for banks to require this. In fact, it is probably in your best interest to have this scenario because the last thing you want is to have one huge bill at the end of the year. And it's better to break it up and let the bank handle it for you. In some cases, banks will not do this, and so you will be responsible for making sure that you have this money set aside. So let's take a look. We're told that their monthly mortgage payment is $1,233.56, and that's just for the loan. We also are told that their semi-annual property tax bill, so that means every 6 months they have to pay $5,206, and their homeowner's insurance, which is annual, is $1,080. So the question here is, how much is the monthly payment they make to Wells Fargo? All right, so let's go ahead and start with the mortgage. The mortgage amount, we're told, is $1,233.56. Then we have their semi-annual property tax. That's going to be, we're told that it's $5,206, but we have to divide that by 6. And we divide that by 6 because it's a semi-annual property tax. So on a monthly basis, that's going to work out to $867.67. And then lastly, homeowners insurance, homeowners insurance, sorry, homeowners insurance and that is going to be $1,080, and that's going to be divided by 12 months, and that works out to $90 a month. So then we're going to add this amount, and that amount together. Okay, so total monthly works out to $2,191.23. Okay, so that is the answer to the question to this problem. Okay, let's move on to example number 4. We're told that Noah and Lindsay are considering buying a house and are researching the potential costs. Their adjusted gross income is $135,511, and the monthly mortgage payment for the house they want would be $1,233. The annual property taxes would be $9,400, and the homeowner's insurance premium would cost them $876 per year. The question is, will the bank lend them $190,000 to purchase the house? So one of the things that banks will do is calculate what's called a front-end ratio. And this front-end ratio is going to be equal to the monthly housing expense that they're going to incur in this particular scenario divided by the monthly gross income. And if the front-end ratio is 28% or less, then the mortgage company will feel that it is low enough, that ratio is low enough to lend them this money. Okay, so let's take a look at calculating the monthly housing expense. All right, so monthly housing expense. So that's going to include their monthly mortgage payment. So this calculation is going to be similar to the previous example. $1,233. This is the mortgage. The property tax is going to be $9,400 divided by 12 because that's on an annual basis. So we want to know what the monthly amount is going to be. And that amount works out to $783.33. So this is property tax. And insurance, home insurance. Is going to be, let me go ahead and put it on this side here. All right, let's go ahead and fix that. Home insurance, we're told $876 per year. So we need to divide that by 12. And so that's going to work out to $73. Okay, so if we were to add all of these up, so we're going to add this amount, and this amount together, we would get a total of $2,089.33. Okay, now we're gonna divide this amount by the monthly gross income, and we're told that their adjusted gross income is $135,511. Okay, so we're gonna divide that by $135,511, and punching that into the calculator, we would get a ratio of 0.015, okay, or 1.5%, which is clearly under the 28% ratio. Okay, now I did make a mistake here. If you recall the formula, it says monthly gross income. and I put in the annual gross income. Okay, so we're going to need to adjust that to a monthly gross income, not an annual. So we're going to take 135,511 and we're going to divide that by 12. And let's go ahead and erase this number and this figure. The monthly gross would end up being $11,292.58. And if we were to calculate that ratio, that works to 0.185 or 18.5%, okay? Which is still under the 28% threshold that most banks would look at, okay? So the answer is yes, the bank will likely lend them the $190,000 to purchase the house. Now, in addition to the front end ratio, banks also look at the back end ratio, okay? And the back end ratio is calculated as the total monthly expense divided by the monthly gross income, okay? The front end ratio only, in the previous example, took into account monthly housing expense, which only included the mortgage amount, the property tax, and the insurance premium. However, with the back end, we're going to include other expenses, okay? So in this example, and not that the calculation's any different, it's just that in this example, the couple, Vivian and Arlie, have additional expenses that also needs to be included in the calculation. Okay, so this couple are considering buying a house, and they need to figure out what they can afford and what a bank will lend them. We're told that their adjusted gross income is $166,988. Their monthly mortgage payment for the house they want would be $1,544. Their annual property tax would be $9,888. The insurance premium is going to be $1,007 per year. Okay, now this is where the difference comes into play. They also have a $510 per month car loan, and their average monthly credit card bill is $5,100. Okay, so then the question is, would the bank lend them $210,000 to purchase their house? Okay, so again, we're going to look at the total monthly expense first. So total monthly expense. Okay, so we have the mortgage, which we're told is going to be $1,544. And then the property tax is going to be $9,888 divided by 12, which works out to $824. They also have home insurance. That's going to be $1,007 divided by 12 months. And that works out to $83.92. Okay, car loan is $510 per month, and then credit cards. They're paying on average $5,100 per month. So that gives us a grand total of $8,062. Okay, we're rounding it to the nearest whole dollar. And our monthly gross income is going to be $166,988, and that's going to be divided by 12. and that's going to work out to $13,915.67. So we're going to round out to the nearest dollar. So our back end ratio, is going to be 8,062 divided by 13,916. And plugging that into the calculator, we see that it works out to 0.579 or 57.9%. Okay, now with the back end ratios, banks generally want a back end ratio less than 36%. Okay, sometimes they'll push it up to 41 or 42, but the lower the better. In this case, we have a back end ratio that is way too high. Okay, now here's a lesson to learn in this particular example. If this couple did not have a car loan and credit card bills, so just these three items like the previous example, then they would have qualified for this loan. They would have been well below the 36% threshold. Okay, so the lesson here is that in real life, when you're ready to or you're getting ready to buy a home, make sure that you don't incur any car loans or have any credit card debts, because that's going to affect your ability to qualify for a mortgage. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the last example here. We are told that Yesenia and Angel are opening a new restaurant. They take out a 3.9%, 15-year, $300,000 mortgage on the building, but they do not have a lot of money because they are spending what they have to get the business started. In the future, they intend to have much more money from the success of the restaurant. The question here is, can they get a loan that will fit well with their current and future incomes? How much will they pay in interest for the loan? And what are the monthly payments? Okay. Now, one of the products that are available out there is called a balloon mortgage. Okay. This is where they pay a monthly amount, which is very low, and then at the very end of the term, the last payment is a very high last payment. Okay. One type of balloon mortgage is called an interest-only mortgage, where only the interest is paid for every single month until the final month, and then the final month they have to pay back the loan amount. One thing to note is that since no part of the principal is paid until the final month in this scenario, the amount of principal owed does not decrease each month. Okay, it remains constant. So this is why I said that if they borrow $300,000, then the last payment in this example would be $300,000. Okay, so let's go ahead and calculate this. This is going to be the loan amount, which is $300,000. Okay, we want to calculate what the monthly interest is going to be. So we were told that the interest was 3.9%, which means it's going to be multiplied by 0.039, and we have to divide that by 12 because there are 12 months in a year, and the interest rate here is the annual percentage rate. And when we multiply this out, we get $975. Okay, so they are borrowing this loan for a 15-year period. Okay, so 15 years works out to 180 months. That means they're going to pay $975 for 179 months. Okay, so we're going to need to multiply 975 by 179 months. And the reason it's 179 months is because the last month they're going to make the balloon payment, which is the $300,000. Okay, so we want to know how much interest that they're going to be paying. So when you multiply this out, that works out to $174,525 in interest. Okay, so that's how much they're going to be paying. So that, I believe, answers all of the questions. Can they get a loan that will fit well with their current future income? The answer is yes. It's called a balloon mortgage. How much will they pay in interest for the loan? That's going to be $174,525. And the monthly payments are going to be $975 for 179 months. And then the last month, they're going to have to pay the $300,000. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense to you. In this particular example, the important thing is if you ever get into a balloon mortgage or a balloon situation, you're going to want to make sure that you save up this amount so that you're able to pay this back at the end of the term. All right, hopefully this made sense. If there's any questions or any confusions or you need further clarification, please go back to the beginning of the recording and listen to it again. Thank you.